We are 1 week post 100 mile. We're actually out on a run, which is pretty awesome. So what I'm going to share today is just a little recap of the race itself, what went right, how things felt, what I fueled with, how I fueled, my gear, that kind of stuff, just because I think it might help people who are planning 400 milers of their own. So I'm going to share snippets of the course as well as my thoughts on great ways to train for this race, some things that I missed out on as far as training that just because I wasn't aware. So I'm going to hopefully share some of that might help you guys who are looking at this race in particular in the future. So the race went really, really well, other than one little thing. There are a tremendous amount of steps on this race course. So you have to know it's in the new River Gorge National Park in West Virginia, which is absolutely stunning. Beautiful, beautiful course. But there's a bunch of stairs. These stairs, I'm assuming, a lot of it is left from all the old mining that went on there. So they utilized those steps for us. I did not train for steps. I trained for climbing. My climbing legs were great. So what ended up happening is I felt really, really good. And we were on sub 24-hour pace through mile 50. And there in the beginning, we were actually, I think at the 50K mark, we were still on like a 22-hour pace. So we were on sub 24 up through mile 50. And then we were able to pick up our pacers, at mile 52, I believe it was. So once we picked up the pacers, we still stayed together. I was with my friend Lindsay, who I did most of my training with. So we're pretty similar, compatible pace-wise. We're always pretty close to each other as far as races. And then, like I said, we trained most of the time together. So we stayed together even after we picked up our pacers. And then around probably mile 55, 56, my hip flexors started to really, really tighten up. I'm like, well, this is interesting. And it was just on my left side, and it just got tighter and tighter. So I started to pull back a little bit, and then I went ahead and let Lindsay and her pacer go. And my pacer and I were like, we'll just hang back here and let's just do what feels right. So it continued to get a little tighter as I went, and ended up basically the hip flexors quit working for me. So your hip flexors are what help you raise your leg up, right? Going up steps, real hard to do when you can't bend your knee and lift your leg. So I was basically stepping with my right foot and basically swinging my left leg around to get up the steps. So obviously I slowed way down. But I kept going. I was, it's not pain. It's just, they just weren't working and they were super, super tight. So it just slowed my pace down. But the great part of all of this is that is the only issue I had the entire race. Every 100 miler I've ever done in the past, there's been puking involved because I have not been the best at fueling. If you have followed me, that is what I've been super focused on for the last year. And so this was the first time that I had zero stomach issues. I felt so good. My energy stayed high. I never got any kind of nausea. I never got sleepy. I've also had a history of like around 2 a.m. or so in the middle of 100, I just get really sleepy. Obviously you're supposed to be asleep at that time. That never happened this time, which was super cool. And at one point my pacer even said, I wonder what time it is. And she looked at her watch and she's like, oh my God, it's 4 a.m. And I said, what? It can't be 4 a.m. So it shows you how, the time had just flown by. I'm like, how is it 4 a.m.? That's amazing. So we knew hey, well, the sun's going to be coming up shortly. This is great. So we were just plugging away. No energy issues, no stomach issues. I had never really had any dark spots. Like usually in a 100 miler, you'll have a couple of times where you're just really, kind of bottomed out, tired. You don't want to do it anymore. I never had that. I just felt like, let's just go. We minimized our time at aid stations and at our crew stops. My goal was under 3 minutes to be in and out. That is one of my biggest recommendations for people, especially if it's your first 100. Get in, get your stuff, and get out. Do not hang around the aid stations. Do not hang around chit-chatting with your crew. That is one way to really blow a lot of time in a race. And you don't realize until the end, and you add all that up. If you've stopped at 10 aid stations and you've spent 10 minutes at each one, that's a lot of time. So get your stuff, get in, get out. So my pacer stayed with me till mile 93, so through the night. And I'm going to put a video in here of that she took in the middle of the night that I didn't know she took till after, of what I look like going up those steps in the middle of the night when I could not lift my leg. Highly entertaining. So I had found a stick on the side of the trail and I was using it. And anyway, I did not pick up my trekking poles or hiking poles until mile 93 because they are so helpful, but I have this really bad habit of, if I have the poles in my hands, I'm not great at fueling. And that was what I really wanted to focus on. So I was really afraid to use the poles and not be able to eat enough. So at mile 93, my husband picks up pacing duties and he's like, do you think these poles will help? And I said, they will. I'm just worried about eating. And we've got 7 more miles to do. And he's like, I'll make sure you eat. Don't worry. Just take the poles. What a difference that made. So using the poles the last 7 miles, and then, probably halfway through the section he was with me, I was able to start running again. And I still had the tightness and the stuff going on with the hip flexor, but it kind of leveled out. It wasn't quite as technical, so I wasn't having to pick my leg up as much to step over as much stuff. So I actually started running again, and I ran the last several miles, which was just made me feel so good to be able to do that, not be crawling across the finish line. So ended up finishing in just a little over 29 hours. My goal was sub 24, but it was like, hey, I'm thrilled. This race has a time limit of 32 hours, so I had plenty of time. I knew I was going to be fine. And like I said, I felt really good. So really happy with that. I felt good. We went back to our cabin, which was right there in the same resort that the race was in, and, showered, ate a protein bar and a banana, which is what I always eat after my long runs, and laid down and slept for about an hour. And, my leg hurt. Like I could not lift my knee for about 2 days without using my hands to lift my leg to get in and out of the truck and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of a pain, but I recovered so fast. We were out hiking on Monday. We were out hiking on Wednesday. Thursday was a travel day. I ran Friday. So 5 days later, I was out running. I have not ever had that ability before, or desire. So I ran on Friday and lifted weights Friday. Saturday I lifted and did just like a hill walk. And then Sunday I ran again. And then today I'm running again, and I lifted this morning. So I really feel really great as far as recovery goes. And that is all, I think, because of not only the training, but, the nutrition part of it as well is huge. My body was able to bounce back pretty quickly. So I'm still being smart, and I'm going to, take it easy. Like today's run's only like 4 miles, even though it's up a big hill. It's okay. So 4 miles today. I'm going to get back on my spin bike tomorrow, which I have not done in months. And then kind of get back into a groove from there. The things I would say about this race, one, it is exceptionally well done. Markers are incredible. You should not get off course. We got off course one time and it was totally our fault. It was just, we weren't paying attention, and I missed a turn off onto the trail. It went up a road too far, and I was like, something doesn't feel right. So we figured it out pretty quickly. It was totally our fault, but it is really, really well done, well marked. The race directors are awesome. They live there. They invest in that community. That's one of the reasons that they do this race, is to raise money for their nonprofit, which gets youth out into the outdoors, which is so phenomenal, because especially if you live in West Virginia, it is a mecca of outdoor activity. So they are phenomenal people. They put on such a good event. The volunteers were incredible. The different aid stations had like different themes. These people were having a party. They were dressed up. They were just super nice, so helpful. The course is absolutely gorgeous. The only thing I will stress is train on stairs. Train on stairs. Had I known the amount of stairs I was going to have to climb, I would have probably trained on the step mill, which is the machine with the rotating stairs, once a week. I would have done that religiously. And, you know, had I done that, I think that issue would not have happened to me when I was out there. And it may not happen to you. I've just thrown it out there as something to be aware of. There are water crossings, although it was pretty dry this year for us. So we were able to do the whole race without getting wet. That will not be the case every year, I'm sure. But I highly recommend it. It's beautiful. It's challenging. Great people. Even though there's a lot of technical stuff and there's a lot of climbing, there's also a lot of runnable stuff. So if you go into it strong, you actually have a lot of runnable sections that should allow you to have a pretty good time. I think my time would have absolutely been under 24 hours had I not had the hip flexor issue. So it's a great race. I recommend it. I am moving on and on to the next goals, which are, you know, some other things that we will talk about later. So we are going to talk about the nutrition during the 100-miler. This is what it looks like to fuel for 100 miles. So I followed the same process that I did during my entire training. And that is staying somewhere between, even wrote everything down for y'all, somewhere between 250 and 300 calories per hour. A couple of the hours I took in a little more, a couple of the hours I stayed around the 250. So it averages out somewhere between there and around 55 carbs per hour. That calculates out, if you go it took me 29 hours, 8,200 to 9,650 calories, somewhere in there, and around 1,716 carbs. So that's over the whole amount of time. So what I did every hour is I either had a gel and a honey stinger waffle. That was every hour. So I did the same thing I did during training that I've showed y'all before, where I put one of each of these in a Ziploc bag. And I took however many Ziploc bags I needed to get me from that aid station to the next stop where I was going to see my crew, because they had my restock of everything. So that's what I did, you know, every hour. Sometimes it was the Science and Sport, sometimes it was the honey stinger, and I just did that every hour. Then for some variety, I did the Bobo's PB&Js. I ended up having 3 of those during the whole race. And typically when I had these, I tried to time them where they were around the same time I was going to see the crew, because then I could also get the Pringles that they had in the crew stuff. So I was able to have almost like a mini meal. So I did it around lunchtime. I had one of these and about a serving of Pringles. And then I did it again like around dinner time, where I tried to plan it where I got a little more calories. So that would have been more calories in the hour, because these are about 230 calories by themselves. And then, you know, serving these is 150. So, you know, that gave me what, 350, 350, 360, somewhere in there, over 300 calories for that hour. In addition to that, I also had at the aid stations 3 separate times. I had probably half a serving. I kind of figured it off of half of a pack, which is a serving actually, in a cup with broth in it. So that was wonderful in the middle of the night, especially. Even though it wasn't super cold, it got cold early in the morning, but the overnight wasn't terrible. There's something for me that's really helpful about having something hot in the middle of the night. So that is what I did. I did this 3 different times, again, with broth in it from the aid station, so it was nice and hot. And then the last thing I had, which I don't have out here, is 2 different times I had a triangle of a cheese quesadilla, and that was also from the aid station, so it was nice and hot. So, you know, that I've calculated into those numbers that I just shared with you. I also drank a tremendous amount of Element for my electrolytes. So basically I had water in my pack, in my bladder, and then I had a soft bottle in the front. And every time I refilled that soft bottle, I put a packet of Element in it. And so that was pretty much at every aid station and every crew stop. So every time I saw them and every time I was at an aid station, I refilled that, I put in a pack of Element. So I ended up having quite a bit of Element, and I drank quite a bit of water as well. So I stayed super hydrated, no cramping, no nausea, no drops in energy. This worked perfectly for me. All right, and then lastly, I was going to talk a little bit about what I wore. I actually did not change clothes at all during the race. I thought I had extra clothes with the crew just in case, but I never felt the need to. I typically don't change unless there's an issue, like if I'm having some chafing somewhere, if there's a seam rubbing the wrong way, If something's causing me issues, like if my socks are bunching up or if they've gotten really, really wet, none of that happened. So I stayed in the same clothes the whole time. So what I wore always, my Injinji toe socks. These are the trail version. So they have got wool in them and they're awesome. The Injinji toe socks have been my go-to for years. That's all I run in anymore, whether it's on the road or on the trails or whatever. That is what I wear. And then of course, Lululemon outfitted me and my crew for the race, and that's what I would have worn anyway. But my go-to for the running for sports bras is the Energy bra. So I did that. It just has, simple crisscross back. I feel like for me, it has just enough support and I've not had any issues with like chafing or anything. And then I did one of the Swiftly tanks. This is the one I wore. I did the blue. I tried to find a brighter color, and it's easier for the crew to spot you as you're coming. But the fall doesn't have a ton of bright colors. I didn't think about that ahead of time. So I did get a really pretty blue. They also gave us, a short sleeve and a long sleeve version, which I did not end up needing for that evening, but I wore them on the trip otherwise. So that is, I think this is called Larkspur Blue. So I wore that the whole time. And then my favorite running shorts, these are the Wonder Train. These are the 6-inch, and they do have pockets. And let me tell you, during the race, these pockets were stuffed with stuff. I had my phone in one. I had some of my fuel in one. It's got also some of the smaller pockets up in the waistband, so you can put stuff there. I had stuff everywhere. But these are wonderful. And for me, the 6-inch length is perfect. That's what I wear all the time when I run. And then down to my feet, I wore the Lululemon Blissfeel trail shoe. And I've talked to y'all about these shoes before, but they were amazing. I wore this one pair the entire 100 miles, 0 issues. They have really good traction on the bottom. They are just super comfortable. I would love to see maybe just a little more toe support for rocks and stuff, but I really had 0 issues with them. And a lot of times when they, after I've worn them for a while, I've had to stop and relace them because they loosen up. I didn't stop one time to relace these in the entire 100, but I think a lot of that's because the trail was dry and I wasn't going through water and stuff like I am a lot of times. So they are amazing. The 100 miles in one pair was a true test, and they passed with flying colors. So that was my gear. The only other thing I used was the last 7 miles. I told you guys I used my trekking poles, and those are the Black Diamond Z. I'll have to look it up. They're the collapsible ones. They're super, super light, carbon fiber, just wonderful. I love them so much. But I don't use them a ton, but they really helped that last 7 miles when I was, towards the end, and I needed a little help with my hip flexors acting up on me. So that is the gear.
Yesterday, I'm pretty sure the craziest thing to do so far in going on the 5th running of this race, the thing I did not expect at all was to be here and know so many of y'all. I have made so many friends in the last 5 runnings of this race.
comes into the 27-mile aid station.
That's right.
Coming into mile something. Mile 63.75, and it's a party at 10 o'clock at night.